Welcome to another episode of the Career Talks Podcast. I'm your host, Orlando Haynes. You guys know the drill because I say the same opening every time. Maybe I need a new opening. Who knows? Let me know if you got a good one that I can use. But each and every week, I bring you amazing guests to impact your career and your life. And so this week is no short of that. Super excited for today. But before we get started, make sure you're subscribing to the podcast, Apple, Spotify, and YouTube at Career Talks Podcast. So appreciate that. So tonight I met this young brother at RecFest last year. He was introduced to me by a mutual connection. I believe it was Anna Morgan. He was standing there. She was like, "Oh, you got to meet this young brother." Oh, no, it might have been, I want to say might have been Isha, but I forgot. I forgot who it was, but Nate, correct me if I'm wrong, who it was. And she was like, "You just two got to connect. We get to talk." And I was like, "Yo, got to have you on the podcast. Need more, more brothers and more sisters, more African American professionals out here that are in this career development space, shining and doing things correct." So happy to bring on this young entrepreneur, founder and CEO of Infinite Talent Solutions, Mr. Nate Wiley. How are you, sir?
I am doing great, sir. How you doing today?
Good, brother. Good, good. I was just
I
complaining. You got
do
the perfect lighting.
I do got it was Kim Blue. I just saw her this
Kim
past.
Blue. Was it Kim that introduced
Yeah,
us? Okay. I was
yeah.
getting close
I
with
I
Keisha.
I just saw her in Atlanta like a couple of days ago. I was like, she wouldn't let me get by with that one. Let me let
Okay.
me correct.
Yeah, yeah, correct me. Yeah. Miss Blue. My bad, Kim. But if you're seeing this, yes, Kim Blue, Miss Kim Blue out of Atlanta, HR practitioner, executive. So I'm glad I met her in person that day too. But yeah, was good to meet you there at RecFest. Was that your first RecFest?
Yeah, that was my first Rec Fest. I can't remember what happened the year before I didn't make it, but I'm glad I decided to go. It was a good time. Like I try to, hit a few conferences, but that one was there. I think we got rained on a little bit, but I did
Yeah,
like the sort of the outside aspect. It just a little different than the same old conference workshop, hotel ballroom type stuff. So I'm gonna try to hit it this year too.
sounds good. Sounds good. So Nate, tell more people more about who you are, your business, your background.
Yeah, for sure. So uh, 13 years or so in recruiting. Started out in staffing, and like most recruiters, just worked my way through those progressions, going in house. I think first company was like distribution, then I went to manufacturing. Then I got into tech when I joined Lyft. Then since Lyft, I've been with several startups. For the last year and a half, I've been running my own show as a solopreneur, working with a couple of different startups, both on retainer and doing some contingent searches. But yeah, whole career's been talent acquisition in all its facets.
Love it, love it. So with that, so you started in the staffing space and switched over to corporate.
Yeah, it's kind of
Okay,
full circle. I feel like I'm staffing, ish
yeah,
now sort of deal, like having to do business development and sort of working on sort of get paid as you play type of model. But yeah, it's funny. Like when I was in staffing, I wanted nothing more than to get in house and have that full time role supporting leaders and understanding the business and working with specific groups and stuff like that. But I think it's just human nature. Like you just always want to switch it up. You want to keep growing, want to keep changing. And so once I felt like I checked all those boxes, on the corporate side, I'm like, let me see if I can build something. And so that's what I'm working on
yeah,
now. It's a lot,
nice.
but it feels good to feel like I have more control. I think that's what it's all about, really. If I'm being honest, just I have more choices now. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So if I can get the word out, essentially running a full desk, right? Because like you said, you're doing the business development, the screening,
hmm
the locking down. Yeah, full desk for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Every piece of it, and then making time to hop on with people like yourself. This is like my recess. I feel like from school, if that makes sense. Like I just like to
Yeah,
hop on camera and talk to folks and have a good conversation. So I always like to carve out some time for that. Whereas work is work. Like it's sourcing, it's coordinating, it's uh, cleaning up an ATS or trying to build out a new process, just figuring out, where the barriers are to hiring. Um,
Yeah.
Still dealing with people on all sides as recruiting is. So yeah, it's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, I bet for sure. Yeah, my background's the same, staffing for about 8, 9 years, 10 years, and then switched over to corporate for the other 10. So definitely know that space there. Haven't made the leap into. I thought about it years ago for sure to be like, you know what? Like I know staffing is, it's not rocket science. I was like, do I really want to do it though? So I knew the hustle. You knew the hustle just from working in the staffing firm. Like it's brutal. So it can be brutal at sometimes, depending on the market. But I get it. But congrats to you, man, for taking that lead, man. Not too many people do. So congrats to you on that for sure. What the
Appreciate
skill
it.
set you target in your business, and are you specialized or strictly tech, or what does that look like?
I am, if I had to pick a word, I'm still a generalist. This year, I was actually going to sort of niche down. Um, but I've been blessed. I've gotten some great opportunities through my networks, and they didn't, require me to have a specific background in a particular type of job function, which has worked to my benefit because it doesn't, at this point, like it doesn't matter who I'm being introduced to. It's like, no, I've worked on that. I feel those type of roles, or I understand that technology, whatever it may be. And it's given me the opportunity to continue to grow my own personal, knowledge base or acumen in different fields versus if I was all engineering and couldn't understand, how to recruit for a CFO or how to recruit for, project management teams or something like that. So it's a lot of task switching. Thank God for Chat
Mm.
GPT. I learned a lot on the fly. But it's nice that I can have a conversation, with all types of different candidates. And one of the assignments I'm working on now, I'm actually getting an opportunity to do some global recruiting. So that's been interesting too.
Okay, cool, good deal. You said thank God for chat. Yeah, man, that's a powerful tool. Like people got to know
ChatGPT
you
came
got to use that
around.
thing.
Hey,
You got to use
ChatGPT
that.
came
You got to
around
leverage it.
just as I was deciding to do my own thing. ChatGPT popped up. I was like, okay,
Yeah,
like now
you
we're
help.
rolling.
Right. This thing don't put me 6 months in advance, helping me out
Man,
build out the framework and the business plan. So absolutely, that's funny. So let's talk about the topic, right? I always reach out to the guests and let them pick that topic because I feel they're more versed in speaking about that thing. And this is powerful, right? We're in the midst of still at the top of 2025. What career moves people are thinking, what's next, whether they want to stay, go, transition, promotion. What's your take currently on what I call the career economy of 2025?
brother, it's I think it depends on, individually, right? Like what field are you in? What's your job function? What's your tenure at your company or your level as a professional? It's the way I've always approached this topic is starting with that self assessment, and you really have to understand where you fall within the market and sort of what's available to you right now. But it's very it's it's rocky in the way of you kind of don't know where to step next, if that makes sense. And so it's already the landscape has definitely changed over the last couple of years. We are in a market where companies and employers have leverage right now. You have more qualified candidates looking for roles versus there being all these open positions and no talent to fill them. And so the market is very competitive. It gives the companies the opportunity to run very elaborate interview processes that sometimes just tire people out. Um, and then there's the introduction of AI and resume screening, candidate screening, and a lot of different sort of um, sort of components that goes into the application process, which is now for those job seekers that may not have done this in a while or not keeping up, not really understanding that, you really have to be very intentional about submitting your resume and then also following up with someone, at that organization to really try to get in front of someone or have your resume or your application considered. And so when I say it's rocky, it's not knowing where to step, and then it's also um, you want to look down and see where you're stepping, but also you got to look up and see what else may
Mhm.
be coming your way. So it's kind of it's rocky ground as well as the wind is blowing. To stay on the same analogy, and I just see a lot of job seekers not giving enough credit to the challenging landscape that it is, and understanding that we all just have to step it up a little bit. It's not enough to just have a well-written resume. Like, you also have to be actively networking, following up on those connections, and even going as far as I've been getting several candidates now send a resume, also a portfolio, or almost like a personal pitch deck of their brand and what they've done. Like, they're
Mm.
really taking an extra step to try to stand out, um, which is smart. But the majority of people are trying to find, what's the least amount of friction that I can encounter to get in front of somebody, and so they don't take those extra steps. And I get it, right? Like, we all want things to be easy and simple, but with the market being what it is, those individuals that are taking, the extra initiative, or those extra steps to try to go above and beyond just as an applicant, starts to set the tone of, if I'm doing all this just to get a conversation, like, I will definitely be a productive member of the team. And so they're already starting to brand themselves like very early in the process.
Do you feel as though employers, it's almost like a double-edged sword, where they're taking advantage of the talent pool, meaning elongating the process to find what they feel is the perfect fit for their organization, but at the same time, like you just said, rewarding the folks that have gone through the process, that are sticking with it and saying, okay, yes, again, are you seeing that companies like, you really could have probably done it sooner, but you took advantage of the talent pool, knowing there was 5 or 10 or 20 more that you could have probably went with, instead of pulling the trigger faster.
For sure. I mean, it's yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I work very closely with the founders, with hiring leaders, and so I can see when they're, sort of flexing the leverage, or the lopsidedness, if that's a word, of the market, to be able to say, I can interview for as long as I want to. I can add on additional interviews. I can require an assessment, or some sort of take home assignment as part of the process, and just do everything I essentially want to make me feel comfortable about this hire. Whereas at one point, when we felt like things were a little bit more balanced, I was able to, really convince leaders that, this person isn't going to wait forever for us to figure our stuff out, or we're going to lose them to someone who has a much more condensed interview process. And so I definitely see it. And depending on the individual leader, like, they love it, right? Like, they love that power. Like, I've had to try to convince some leaders that, just because someone had to reschedule doesn't mean that, we should just kick them out of the process. But they feel like the candidate pool is so deep that, if they couldn't inconvenience themselves, or they couldn't make it happen in the time frame that I want them to, then let's just keep going. Let's just keep moving. And I don't like that kind of, you know mentality when it comes to hiring, because it should be more of a pleasant experience, right? We should enjoy meeting new people, and it's really networking. Like, you never know where you might cross paths with this person again. And so I try to make sure I'm, letting leaders know that even if you don't feel like they're a great fit for the role, like, we still have to. I feel like humane is being too dramatic, but let's just keep things in perspective here. Like, emergencies happen, things come up, people have to reschedule, especially if they're actively working, and life happens. Like, people come to me all the time, like, "Hey, Nate, I'm really interested, but this just isn't a good week. Like, I, got 10 different things going on. If y'all can wait, I can hop on a call next week or something like that." So you have to, really balance that, and make sure that, one, we're not being taken advantage of and sort of stalling for for someone that may not work out, and then also make sure we're giving people grace to to make sure that it's somewhat convenient for their life as well. But to your point, like for sure, like we even not extending offers as high as they may have once did. And then I work with startups too, so there's always that level of we need the best of the best anyway, and so you drop that into today's market, like it's you're literally looking for the one that can walk on water. So it's a little tough sometimes.
Yeah, it's like everyone says that, right? We want the top candidates. We want the top candidates, and I love in conversations. I'm always and people who've heard me speak on this. I put the onus back on the employer as well, and saying, "Well, don't you think top candidates want top employers? What are you doing to separate yourself?" Right. So, and I get it, when the market shifts, it's now a buyer's market for the employer, right? But that shouldn't change the process of the interview. And Keisha joined, appreciate you, Keisha, about the candidate experience. That should never change regardless of the market, right? If you have a strong interview process, it should stay the same and work no matter what. The only shift I would think, and I want to get your thoughts, when it's less candidates, you may need to tighten it up to move faster. But I don't see the need for you to move to stretch it out just because you can.
I agree. I definitely agree. Especially, I'm all for a short interview process.
Mhm.
There have been there have been times where I've very rarely, let me say, I have suggested that we add an additional, bar raiser interview, or I may ask that we put some sort of assignment or a panel interview, something to kind of weed it out,
Mhm.
just because we had so many candidates. And then to your point, the inverse of that, if we know we're looking for a niche skill set, and we're only getting two or three at a time, and they're actively interviewing with other places, like yeah, like we need to move quick. Um, but it's a lot of it's so many factors that go into it, because we also know how critical a hire is, right? So I think at sometimes it's
Yeah.
they have to stew on it or marinate just to feel good about a hire, even if all the signals are positive. I've worked with some leaders who just always felt so I don't know, like they wish they can hit a fast forward button 6 months in to know that this person is going to be a great a great hire, and they're so nervous about, like, is this person really going to do what I need them to do, and be as productive as they're coming across. Like, yeah, it sounds good, yeah, it looks good, but is it really going to sort of transfer to own the job and yield in results? Um, and it's people like that where it's almost like more of a therapy session. Like like you kind of have to get them
Mhm.
to calm down and relax, and then sort of paint the picture of, like, hey, like, we know they can do ABC. You have this person that's going to help them, then you have this person that's going to help them, and so you kind of help them relax a little bit by saying, like, they're not going to fail. Like, if this person can do 50% of what we think they can do, then that's going to move you further. Because usually when someone's coming into a startup, like, they're going to own something, they're going to build it, they're going to be a creator. um, and so it's getting to a point to where you can, again, like, convince that leader that this person is capable. And oftentimes, all these different steps in the interview process is just to, again, just feel 100% positive about your decision. But I mean, sometimes it's funny if you take a step back, you have one conversation with a person and you have
Mhm.
8 interviews with a person. Neither one is may or may not make a difference, right? Like, it's like that
Yeah.
I've seen it on the whole sides, right? I've seen leaders you know make somebody jump through hoops, and and it works out well. And then I've seen people hire a friend or a referral, someone that they thought was going to be great, and it don't work out, but then they're kind of stuck with that person because there's that personal relationship. And so sometimes it's best to look outward, just because even if it's not the best fit that you find out after a while, like, there's not that, you know I feel bad now because I brought this person on personally. So there's all these these emotional aspects. I feel like that goes into this as well, that you have to sort of bake into the process in addition to like a technical assessment. It's interesting to watch. Like it's like the ultimate human experiment every day.
Yeah, that's good. I think you just said it's um, like premarital counseling. So you sure you're gonna like this and like that? Yeah, before you jump the broom. But it's really what it is, right? Because it is a marriage. At some point, you got
It
to
really
both parties
is.
got to say I do.
And that's the thing, right? Like it's also, convincing a leader, you're taking your time because you want to make the right decision. While we're waiting, they're dating other people, right? Like we we may lose this person, and then what are you stand to lose if we don't hire this person now? Like the talent gap that we've identified, like is this, stalling your revenue? Are you going to hit that product launch? Are you going to, hit your investor milestone? Like what's at stake here? And sometimes it takes, putting a little bit of fear in them to go ahead and pull the trigger. Like, yeah, you're right. Like we do need to hurry up and get someone in here. But yeah, it's a lot that goes into making those hiring decisions.
Oh, we might have lost signal for a hot second. Not sure if you're still there with me, Nate.
Yeah, yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, finish what you were saying. It cut out a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. Where did you lose me?
Uh, I actually forgot because it was spinning. I was like, I can still hear you. And then I went out. I'm like, oh my God, we both went out. But then it came back one by
Oh,
one.
okay.
But you were tailing off with the premarital counseling piece, and along
Oh,
with
yeah,
it,
yeah,
since
yeah.
you were
Oh,
responding to that.
no, okay. I'll try to, repeat, but shorten it. But essentially, I was saying like while we're waiting to make a decision, the candidate is, potentially out dating other people. So we may lose that person while we're waiting to make a decision. And then I was saying like sometimes it takes putting a little fear in a hiring leader by getting them to understand, all right, like what's the risk to the business if we don't get this role filled in a certain amount of time. So we have someone that we vetted that we feel like is confident and can do the role. While you're shy to hire maybe something that we need to, discuss and make sure we get to the bottom of that. But are we going to hit the milestones that your investors have placed for you? Like, is this stopping our revenue growth? Is this going to be like an unblock for another department that's in need of some support? And so sometimes like you really have to start to list out everything, not just everything that the candidates bring to the table, but also like what are you looking to accomplish? Like why is this role even open in the first place? And then once you sort of combine all that together, like that may bring a leader around to want to make a decision a lot faster.
And that's the same exact point I was thinking, but you expanded on it well when it comes to extending the interview process. All those things you just brought up are still in play, right? And
Right.
if it's the manager or the manager holding it up, not thinking, hey, your team is taking the brunt of the extra workload until you make a decision, him or her, and you like, no, I think let's see three more candidates, let's see four more. It's like you're not considering, potential burnout for those folks because that can run on 2 3 months. Vacations, people got family stuff, the candidate may be doing stuff, right? And so that can be a process and not considering, like you said, what projects are at hand, deadlines, etc. What's the impact overall? It's just have an effective process. And like what you said earlier, sometimes you have to interject these things to say, I think you guys do need assessment because maybe past histories you only did two steps and it wasn't effective, right? There was no
Mhm.
data behind your decision. It was more just strictly likability. And it was like if you had some indicators maybe giving you a sign to say this person may or may not work out. Not to say it's a silver bullet for an assessment, but at least you had a foundation to guide you a little bit, something. In this way, you like, hey, you may need to do a third step or create that panel so it's more effective, and then maybe one interviews, two more interviews with one individual, higher level director, whatever the status is, the level, and implementing so it's an effective process. But again, like you said, reviewing the impact, and I think those things should be brought up early in the conversation from a talent partner, right? To say, hey, what what's the timeline here, and what's the impact? Can I get your commitment on we can get through this as quick as possible if we start lining up, the solid 3 to 4 candidates for you to look at. Are you having those
Yeah.
types of good discussions to guide them through?
Yeah, it depends on the complexity of the search and how long. To your point, like are we on a deadline here? Um, what is the purpose of this position, right? Like, is this a proactive role for something that we know we're going to need and we're ahead of things, or is are things holding on by a thread and you needed this person yesterday? Those are two completely types of mentalities that you're going to have working with those hiring leaders, whereas one can be a lot more cautious and selective, and just like, no rush, I just want to make sure we find the right person versus I was working with one client where he was, it was basically one person in the organization kind of almost gatekeeping some of the information, and he was scared like if this person leaves, then no one else here is going to know what to do. Um, so and so that was more of a an urgent hire to get someone in to make sure that that one person wasn't going to be the hindrance for an entire quarter or something like that for the organization. But yeah, like it's just so many different angles and perspectives that you can come from hiring them, and that's why I think that's why I like startups so much,
Hmm.
because you can be agile and you can like tailor to each specific position that you open almost, versus when I've worked in at large organizations, right? Like it was kind of tough to have all these customized interview processes when you had so many different hands that were involved, that if this one doesn't look like the last process, then that was going to throw off the whole downstream for who's handling things in the hire. And so it had to stay very consistent versus when it's me doing nearly everything. There's been times I change stuff and the business don't even really know because I'm the only one handling it. And so I'm identifying those inefficiencies in
Hmm.
real time. And so I'm making those changes, without having to inform a whole bunch of stakeholders about a change in process because I'm the only one with my hands on the process anyway.
So, from a candidate perspective, looking at what's coming and how to stay ahead, what are you hearing from your clients, colleagues, peers, as to imagine you had the crystal ball and you're saying, okay, here's what here's the streets. This is what they're saying about what's coming in as Q1, potentially Q2 in terms of opportunities.
Again, I think when it comes to like the job market and opportunities, I always like to tell people, taking that sort of self-evaluation, that self-assessment of understanding, what's happening in your field or your industry. There are some industries that are just naturally shrinking, right? Like it's just kind of we don't need as big of teams to handle this anymore. Or there was a technology that may have launched years ago before even AI was the big thing that may have already started to do some of this work, and so there just hasn't been the need for that many professionals in that field, and so some of those people have already pivoted to something different. Now you need to realize, all right, if my field is already naturally shrinking, is something like AI going to expedite that shrinkage? Like, is this something that sometimes it's a couple of different plays you can run, right? Like either I can get really great at this and make sure I'm standing out in my field in that way because I have checked all these different boxes. I work for some notable companies. I have a great network. I have a high value skill set, so I feel confident that I can continue to stay in this field. Um, and so you can just kind of level up or try to rise above, if that makes sense. And then there are sometimes, I need to get out. Like I need to I need to learn something new. I need to pivot. I need to transition. I need a different title that sort of reflects my experience in a different way, almost like rebranding. I think that's
Yeah.
something that a lot of people don't. don't put enough emphasis on or that much attention to is just because you've been one thing for a number of years, like that doesn't mean like you can't, you know, and it may take time, but you can transition into something completely different and sort of rebrand yourself as a professional and what your skills are and your capabilities. Um, and so anyone who's we all should be passive job seekers, if nothing else. I just feel very strongly about that, and it's not to put fear in anyone, but you know, 2020 really expedited me wanting to go do my own thing, just because I saw how quickly things can sort of crash out, right? And so it was like, all right, I need to be able to do something here. Like if and so many companies were laying off, right? And so, especially being a recruiter, if you're being laid off or you're being downsized, and it's a reflection of the market as a whole, then it's not like there's a whole bunch of other companies that are just scooping up all the recruiters. And so it was one of those things where the talent acquisition market was flooded at one point with all the layoffs. Then we had a strong bounce back with everyone wanting to hire people back and build up their teams, and those that was the golden era, like around that 21, 22, and then it kind of started
Yeah.
to shrink again and tank. And so, watching those ups and downs and really being mindful of the market that you're in specifically is very important, both in your particular job function as well as like the industry that you're currently in. And understanding, like, is your skill set only relevant to that particular industry, or is this something that you can almost like plug and play into other organizations? Sometimes I think a lot of people don't give that enough consideration, um, when your entire career has it may have been very successful, but it's been successful around like I've always done manufacturing, and let's just say manufacturing starts to automate so many different things, right? And those jobs just aren't as plentiful as they used to be. Like, can that skill set then be applied to something different? Like, can you take your manufacturing skill set and apply it to a SaaS company? Those are the types of things that people need to start thinking about, and really almost like a mind map, and just start to understand, like, all right, what are my potential moves if I needed to do something right now? And then if I don't like what I'm looking at, if I don't feel like these are like safe bets that I'm confident in, all right, then how do I create more opportunities for myself? Like, is it some people, are in better places than others, right? Like it may just be,
Mhm.
up leveling in one particular thing, or working on one project at their company, and now like they can create a whole new resume and have a whole new sort of tool belt, so to speak. Whereas some people are going to have to work a whole lot harder to sort of redefine themselves and be able to tell another company what they're capable of, or at least be able to kind of show that on paper that they can do other things than what it looks like they've been doing for so long. Um, the biggest issue I see with a lot of people is just getting way too comfortable, and just not being prepared for a layoff, or a reduction in force, whatever you want to call it, or just a termination. Sometimes, like, everybody doesn't get a nice severance package or something like that. Like some companies just say, sorry, we're eliminating this role, and they're kind of left, trying to figure things out. And so, isn't
Yeah.
again part of that self assessment is like, how much money do I have to live off of? That's going to make a big difference. What are some things or some skill sets I have that I may be able to generate some additional income monthly? Am I do I want to, I don't know, work for Instacart? Like, is that something? So like it's I hate to say that, but when it gets to a
Yeah.
point to where you need to live and kind of get some things done, like it's important to understand, like, where do I sit in all this, if some things changes with my profession or my career situation. Are you head of household? Are you the breadwinner, or do you know that your partner can probably carry a lot of the load for a while? Like, these are all different variables that affect people in different ways, that they need to kind of figure out, okay, what's my situation, and how would I navigate, if I needed to, start to look for another job. But looking while you have
Yeah.
one is always the best plan. I'll tell that. even from a just from a value standpoint, like that's something that I do see from a lot of my hiring leaders. Like they highly prefer people who are currently working somewhere versus someone who was caught up in a rift or been out of work for a while.
What's their perception when if someone was caught up more in the company riff where it was not individually targeted or
I mean,
individual separation?
it's not all of them, so I'm not going to say it's everyone, but I've talked to other recruiters, and it seems to be a pretty, they've also encountered other leaders. That's why I haven't worked with every hiring leader in the world, right? So I'm only going by my
Mhm.
experiences, but yes, I've had some leaders who, um, just thinking that if this person was laid off, then they must not have been the best of the best, right? Like if it was a team of five and three got laid off, even like, well, I want one of those other two that got to stay. Like that's that was part of his thought process, right? Like I don't want the one that they let go. Like I want the best one. And it's that's his choice, right? If that's the way he want to think about it. But um,
Mhm.
that isn't always the case, right? Like we don't know what comp could have played a part in that, right? Like maybe the two that got to stay were the
Right.
lowest paid, and it was a cost savings thing. So you just never know, and so that's why I try to talk people out of that mindset or making decisions based off that. And then sometimes it's people who may have voluntarily, you know, to get put on the layoff list because they wanted severance. They wanted to take a little bit of time to, spend some quality time with their family. They wanted to travel. Like I've talked to a lot of candidates that did that as well. So you never really know someone's story. That's why I'm always open to talking to candidates. I'll probably ask. I see your last role was 6 months ago. Just curious. Why you separated to get a little bit more insight. But I'll never, you know, attach a stigma or a fault to someone who got put in a situation that wasn't their fault, right? If a to me, the company mismanaged their funds if they had if they had to lay off so many different people, right? It was some poor decisions made at the top. So I've never understood
Yep.
why candidates don't put more blame on the company. It was like they the one that didn't balance the books, hired too many
Right.
people.
Somebody
So
somebody put the zero and the one in the wrong box.
right,
Did the
right,
numbers wrong.
right. But
So
it's
let me ask you this
go
about
ahead.
culture. So the difference because you have both experience of startup and then larger companies. This I wouldn't say the stigma, but what's happening now, and you can give me your thoughts too, is that companies are now, like you mentioned earlier, running lean. So what happens is more work, you run more work, higher expectations, high pressure to do more with less. But when you go into a startup, you know what you're walking into, right? Like you said earlier, you're going to own a process, create, and so you're very close to everything. You're close to the founders, et cetera, whatever that how big that startup is. But going in, this is going to be the level of expectation of work. Are you seeing people transitioning out of big corporate going into startups because they've already went through that rigmarole and like, hey, I can handle this now, but at least I'm walking to something where that may be more beneficial to me from a comp or title perspective because I'm closer to the process.
I think right now in the current climate, I'm seeing less of that. Um, just because don't get me wrong, like I think there's still you know a large you know group of people who enjoy that startup life. They'll bounce around. They like the
Mhm.
hustle. They like it's not as much red tape. They get to build. They get ownership. A lot more autonomy. Things like that. So it's still you're going to have those people that just enjoy that. But what I talked to someone today actually that declined an offer for one of the startups, and it was just he was like it's a risk. Like we all know that it's a risk going to a startup, and he was just saying that at this point, I just don't want to take that risk. And it was, it was multiple factors. It wasn't just because it was a startup. We also, didn't meet his comp expectations, and tried to compensate it with more equity. But he was very honest and candid with me, which I always try to do as a recruiter. I don't. There's no need for us to, try to hold our cards or lie to each other, right? Like it is what it
Yeah.
is. Like I want you to be happy. I want you to make a good decision. And I'll tell any candidate, like, you gotta do what's best for you. Like I've never, that I can think of. Like I'm not gonna try to twist someone's arm to take an offer if I don't
Never.
feel like this is going to be in your benefit, right? And he was just very honest. It was like I take care of my parents now. I got my own family. It's like I think it's a great team. I love the product. I love the vision, but vision don't pay bills. And so and so now I think just being very honest, like especially with like the new administration and stuff like that, when you just never know, you know, what's going to happen at any point in time. So I'm seeing more candidates hold on to, that stable footing if they feel like they have that at their company. And it made the allure of a startup and the title and things like that might be, very, very shiny and incentivizing at some point. But at the end of the day, I think they kind of really process sometimes like, all right, is this too big of a risk for what I got going on right now? And he was getting very, granular with me, just saying, I got this much overhead, I got this and this. He was like, I can't afford to do that
Oh
right
yeah.
now. Um, and again, that's why it's a little frustrating sometimes. The if I do run into leaders who don't necessarily want to hire individuals, not that they won't hire, but they have a preference for people who are already working. It's like, all right, that's an even bigger challenge, right? Like and I
Yeah.
have to your point earlier. All right, do we what size is the carrot that we're dangling to where this person wants to leave their brand, their reputation, the company that they're killing it, right? Like they're on autopilot, like they like, and they have to come here, start over, figure out new people, new processes, start to build what you say, what you're walking into, right? Like I don't know too many people
Yeah.
who actively work in startups and don't have to do a little something on the weekends sometimes, or late at night, or wake up early or something like that. So that work life balance isn't always usually what someone is coming to a startup to get. That's usually not what they're offering. Like it's usually more so on the compensation side and the opportunity to build, get an inflated title and things like that. And so it's important to understand, what are we offering as incentive to make someone leave somewhere where they're working. um and it's a very tough conversation sometimes to have with a founder, because like that's their baby, right? They think
Yep.
everyone should want to come help them build, and it's a privilege to get in on this, like it's sometimes you just gotta kind of level set and like I hear you, but
Like that. Like,
yeah,
right.
like
Yeah.
but
This is, remember, this is your dream.
right, right. And I
This
think,
is
and
your
it's
dream.
and with that change in the market, I see it. I see it in a lot of people where it's just, I'm not living for work anymore. I think that's the American culture
Right.
usually, right? Like my job is my identification. Like it's who I am. We ask people, what do you do first, right? Because we trying to figure out, like, all right, what kind of life you leading? Like in what way are you
Yep.
important? Is really almost what we're asking when we say, what do you do for a living? I just think over the last few years, just seeing how companies just cut 15,000, 20,000. Like it's like these are real lives here. And I get it. Like it's a business. Like I've never been the one to just bash companies for what they're doing with their practices, but at the same time, the light bulbs just start to go off, right? Like, okay, I got to look out for myself. Like I got to make sure I'm good, and can't just be so dependent on one company for literally my entire life. Is kind of what a company holds. All my time, my money, my benefits, like all that is tied to this company, and they just have way too much control over what's happening. They can make you come back in office. They can make you move to keep your job. Like, I mean, that's a lot of power. So I think now just a
Yeah.
lot of people are like, I don't want to live like that. Like, I don't want you pulling my strings in that way.
Right. Or making you feel guilty if you're not putting in the extra 20 hours each week
Right.
to get projects that whatever it is. And I get it, deadline is deadline. They pay you for results. But it's the corporate and it's such an archaic thought process where it's no longer, you said earlier about humanity, but it's no longer people. I don't know when the last time it was people, process, profit, but it's definitely, it's not people first, right? Very few companies, they'll preach it when you're in there, but when they get you in, then it's like, okay, here we go. Um, but it's definitely, even if you don't feel like it's the high pressure sense of, environment, or it's micromanaging, or it's toxic in a sense. But when you start to see, like I mentioned, it starts to get, things are running thin now. Budgets are getting cut. Projects are still increasing. I'm like, where's the balance in that? How do you get more work if you don't have the money to do a bunch of stuff? And yet there's no difference in saying, hey, um, for this, we're willing to do a better, bonus this year to offset, as we know, everyone you're putting in more work and this and this and that. And there's no end result, or should I say, there's no end time to say, hey, we're going to weather the storm for the next 15 months. Stay with us. It's just this is the new day and age. You're like, what do you mean? Like, hold on,
Right.
I'm just now taking on two more roles, and this is supposed to be my day in the life, and I'm just supposed to eat it. It's like, come on, what are we doing here?
I mean, but it's the it's the power, right? Like, I mean, it's leverage. Like,
Yeah,
when and to your point, like, companies have always known, if I'm paying you, then you're beholden to me, in a certain way, right? But
yeah,
it should be mutually beneficial to both parties, right? Like, I'm giving you my time and my skills, my
yeah,
ideas, my creativity, whatever, like my energy. Um, then my compensation should show that. And so that's how I just started to look at everything, right? Like, this is we're trading. You're sending me money directly to my bank account, and I'm giving you, my ideas around how I can make your company run better. Um, but you're right. Like, if it gets to a point of like, okay, I just feel used here, or something like that, or this just isn't fair, or you're setting like unrealistic expectations and not even. It's a couple levels, right? Like, if I feel like something's unrealistic and I can come to you and have a reasonable adult conversation, like, okay, like, these four things can't all be priority. Like, kind of let me know what should I be spending my time on, because if you're telling me I got to deliver on all this at the same time, I can tell you right now I'm not going to hit that. And so I need to know, which two are most important to you, or what's going to happen when I don't hit this, like, because like something got to give here. And it's important to have those conversations, right? Like, I mean, it's important. Like, and then you have to. I'm sure you have it, right? Like, I think most professionals that's been at this for a while, like, you
yeah.
grow
It's fun.
with
It's
that
funny,
confidence.
Nate. That yeah, but yeah, because we were just saying, and I had a conversation with someone else who was like, there can really only be number one, right? So if you're looking at 20 projects, 5 projects, it's like, okay, all right, what really needs to get done now? And I think, right, that's the conversation between the team and the leader should be able to balance that. Because if all they're doing is pushing projects, and there's no stacking of importance, and it's like, is everything now? How can 5 things be priority? That means there's
Right.
lack of clarity in the vision of what's really necessary. It then feels like we're doing a bunch of busy work to justify the existence, or to validate what we're doing, to show that we're doing stuff. And it's like, that's not what I saw that we're working on.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes
Did you lose me?
you. I'm
Okay,
still
yeah,
with you. Um, True, true. And then sometimes you have to really dig into it and see like if there's an opportunity there for you to, renegotiate, your salary or let me hire someone else or something like that. Can I outsource some of this? But I do think that there's opportunity when things get so stretched, and if you're able to explain in a way that's logical to whoever the decision maker is, like, all right, like if all this needs to get done, I can't do it. Like that. What's important, like let's see if we can simplify this list. Once the list is simplified, all right, like I can handle this. Can this team or this supporting person handle this part of it? Or that's when you could potentially bring in a contractor or something like that. But I think again, not being afraid to have those conversations and coming with solutions to problems like that is to the benefit of that person in that seat. And even then, like that's what you take to the next interview, right? Like how you improve efficiency, or everybody, like, tell me about a challenging time that you had at work, or something like that. Like being able to in detail explain that situation and how you solved for it, knowing that you yourself weren't capable of doing all the work. I think sometimes people just kind of get in their own head, right? Like, if I don't get all this done, then I'm a failure. And it's like no one could do all that. Your boss couldn't do all that, and so like it's unrealistic for them
Exactly.
to ask you to do
Exactly.
it. So you have to kind of find your voice sometimes, and make sure that you're not just speaking up on your behalf, but that's that's what work is, right? Like we're all looking to solve problems on a day to day, and if you have solutions, even if the solution involves someone other than yourself, like you have to be able to kind of speak up and present that solution to the team, and just make sure that you are able to clearly articulate why this is going to solve some of those challenges.
Love it. Love it. Man, I'm going ahead and just start that staffing firm, man. Just get it going.
Hey man,
Get
it's
out in them entrepreneur streets for real.
I think it's and that's why I wanted to go ahead and jump out. I do, you know, I know we kind of been dipping in and out of the topic, but I do think the future is going to be a lot more of consultants and contractors. It's and that's something that I saw when I
Yeah.
was in house, and we did work with like third party companies for whatever it may be. It's so easy to get approval for a consultant or a contractor, or to pay a company or something like that. When you start talking about full-time headcount, like it takes, forever. Like, because they see that as like a long-term commitment versus, let's pay this company $100,000 to place these two people. Okay, fine, sign. I started seeing stuff like that. I'm like, dang, like that, like all the people I done hired for this company, like that is that easy? They just gonna get paid
I know.
six figures for two? Like,
I know.
and
Bro,
that's what
I'm
made me
telling
want
you,
to
I
go out
can't,
there. I was like,
man. When what's crazy, I'll tell you a quick story, is that I worked for a previous company that did exactly that. And so I was leading the corporate TA team. Came in, I think, I don't know, we had maybe 100 recs. And then before the riff, we were down to like 14. So me and the team, we put it together. We knocked it out the park. Had about, I walked in, they had about 60 vendors that they work with. We got it down to 8 of the top performing vendors. Because you had some managers that were more or less loose cannons, and they're just like, "Oh yeah, yeah, go ahead, you can hire, yeah, hire this." We're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" And like millions of dollars was being spent in staffing fees, and they up and did exactly what you did, retained a staffing firm. I mean, they filled the role. They did a good job, but I was like, me and my peer, we were like, we could have done this for 100 grand less. Like y'all could have cut this up between us two. Gave us a bonus of for far less. Gave us at least 10 grand or 15 grand a piece. We could have saved y'all some money and executed the same level of hiring. We were like, you gotta be kidding. You have got to be kidding.
yeah, yeah. I,
I was like, that's
now that
mismanagement of the funds.
I'm on the other side of the house, I have more sympathy for for consulting firms and staffing. But yeah, at one point, I was not for my company spending money on staffing firms. Like I was just like, why don't you just pay the in-house team bonuses? Like I guarantee you will get these roles. Like it's like, why don't you just
Yeah.
incentivize us? Um, I remember real short story. I was working alongside another manager. She was over me, and she outsourced. And, you know, we need to do some high volume hiring, and so she outsourced it to this company. You know, it was going to be like something like 175K over 2 months or some crazy number. And I was like, man, this is ridiculous. But anyway,
That
like
was the
she
fee.
ended up, yeah, like we was gonna it was per hire, but it was based on, you know, how many hires we were expecting. So we kind of like worked out the numbers, like if they place this many people, you know, per week over 2 months,
Mm.
then that's kind of what we would projected to spend on it. And then she ended up leaving the company, and and then her manager, who I now was kind of reporting directly to, you know, was going to replace her. And I went to him proactively and was like, hold off on, you know, layering me. Like I think I got a good grasp of what's going on here. The first thing I did was go to that staffing company, and I was like, this, you know, how can we look at this contract? Because it wasn't really being that productive. Like they were finding people, but my team was still like doing really almost like a second screening and doing like all the interview coordination. So it was like, if we're going to do all that anyway, then we might as well
Mhm.
just build, you know, we just need to invest some money in top of funnel. And I kind of created like the SWAT team to handle that and brought it all in house and ended up saving at least like 75 to 80K, you know, what we were projecting. But yeah, like that was like a big win for me because I just knew I was like, we can do this in house. Like this is ridiculous. Um, and they were fine. Like I'm glad they didn't give us too hard of a time, but they knew they weren't hitting their like levels either that they said they were going to promise us. They were having the same challenges we were having. Like it was like that's why we was paying y'all because this was tough in that market at that time. Um, and so yeah, they were cool. That's like as long as like we don't have to like replace or y'all not gonna ask for refunds on anybody we place, like we can just, you know, rip up the contract and go our
Oh,
separate ways.
oh
I was
wow.
like, cool. I was like, yeah, cool. Like let's do it. Let's do it. But yeah, like
Mm.
it's multiple ways, like I say, but it's a situation like that too that you know, I can use in my interview tool belt if I was ever need to try to pitch my services or something like that. Like I've done high volume, I've done very niche, you know, AI hiring and kind of everything in between.
So the key takeaway is companies make the investment in your TA team, for sure. Develop them, but also support the small business owners out there as well.
Especially infinite talent. Uh,
Yeah, right. I was waiting for you to. I was liven you up. I was waiting for you to slam it in. Yeah, good deal.
for
So
sure.
what's next for Infinite? You see, you're about a year and a half in. What do you see? You know, your expansion look like in the next, say, 5 years? What are you envisioning?
Man, I'm trying to figure out what I'm gonna do over the next 6 months. I mean, the ultimate goal
Yeah.
is to grow. Like I want to get out of the actual hands-on day to day and bring on some recruiters. I want any recruiters I bring on, I want them to be considered as partners. Like it's a certain way in my
Ooh.
mind that I'm thinking about how I want to scale my business. But I would love to continue, you know, primarily working with startups, and then and maybe sort of branch off as I see, you know, the way industries are growing, and maybe have like you know, like a health tech sector or like a fintech sector or
Mm.
AI or something like that, and then maybe have like more of these specialized folks. Um, I know like this year and then probably in the next year, like I only want to work with probably like subcontractors. Um, but I'm also trying to I'm kind of doing some real time brainstorming. I'm also thinking about like how can I potentially give a lot of recruiters out there who I know been out of work for a while. Like if I can figure out in what capacity I can kind of share my work to get them to like either source or I work with a couple of startups where I am in charge of inbound applicant review, and so like that's a lot of work as well. And if I can subcontract some of that work out, and then they can put on their LinkedIn or their resume that they are a contractor for Infinite Talent, just to kind of close that gap, and give them some money, of course, to kind of give them some work while they look for something more permanent, or something that can provide more hours. Like essentially, it's almost like gig work, right? Like it's like recruiting gig work. Like I don't want
Yeah.
to create it for it to be like a long-term fix, but you can get back in the game a little bit, right? Like you can still do your sourcing, your screening, your application review, so that as you're actively looking for something, or if you want to start your own business, right? You can kind of learn from me, and I can tell you every mistake I done made, so that you don't have to fall into that again. But that's the way I'm trying to think about it, because I need to figure out, one, I need some help this year, but then also, other than providing talent to startups, like in what other ways can I be of value to, especially the talent acquisition community? Like that's my people. So I'm always trying to figure out like what can we do, um, to help each other, because I do think talent acquisition teams are going to continue to stay slim, especially with the introduction of all these new AI tools and things like that. So even thinking through, you know, who can I partner with to help reskill recruiters in a way, whether it's I think prompt engineering is a big skill set. I have it on my to-do list to take one of those courses to really figure out like how do I get advanced level skill sets within like ChatGPT or Anthropic or something like that. I think that's going to be a big one. You know, Being a super user of a particular ATS is a big one. Like I think a lot more is going to be done within applicant tracking systems, and really optimizing it and configuring it to be a lot more automated than what it is. A lot of ATSs aren't being used to their full capacity, right? Like I've used a lot of them. I sat in a lot of talent ops meetings and things like that as well. Like we're just kind of scratching the surface, right? Usually recruiters, like I just need to be able to post a job, click through the resumes, and set up interviews. Like that's all we really need it for. But if you go in and start looking at all those different automations, notifications, even going through and setting up all your recs with the appropriate knockout questions, filling out all the interview kits, creating tailored scorecards, all that stuff takes a ton of time. That especially somebody like myself, like it takes a long time to create all that. And so, getting recruiters to a point to where they can master all that and really be able to make an impact as a team of one or a team of two at a company, I think is going to really increase their value. So I'm trying to think about like how do I package all of this and sort of be able to provide it to recruiters in a way of whether you want to start your own thing or just become a lot more valuable, and be able to pitch yourself as like this TA expert that can do all these different things, almost be like a puppet master over the talent acquisition program. Because I think ultimately we're all just going to be manipulating different systems, and making sure that each one is talking to the next as we move candidates through the pipeline. So the recruiters that can do that, that can create like a an efficient process with the right tooling, and then also when it's appropriate to do so, jump in and be able to add that personal touch, and build that rapport, and kind of get to understand the almost like the personality behind the candidate to be able to make sure that this is the right fit. Like those are going to be the recruiters that I feel like really gonna shine this year and moving forward.
Got it. Appreciate you, brother. A lot of stuff there. A lot of stuff for people to circle back, listen, jot down, and really, take a second note and start to unpack it as they look into, what's coming down the pipe for 2025. But before I let you go, I wanted to make sure that share with folks where they can connect with you, utilize your services, partner with you, etc.
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best way to get me. I'm usually always in there trying to check my messages. Responses can be slow sometimes. The inbox do get packed between, people trying to sell me everything and uh, consulting, coaching, and all these other services out there. But by all means, Nate Wiley on LinkedIn, and it's Nate at infinatetalent.com if someone wants to send me a direct email. Whether if you just want to connect to network, or if you have some hiring you need, even if I don't have the bandwidth, I can find you somebody for sure. So that's going to be part of how I expand this year.
Awesome. So last question I always ask folks is, why do you do what you do every day?
Short answer, pay bills. Long,
That's the real answer. Let's be
um,
honest. Yeah.
I intentionally became a recruiter. Like it's not something I just fell into. Like you talk to a lot of
Mm,
recruiters, and it was like I just kind of fell into this, or someone referred me or put me on or something like that. When I graduated college, I was under the belief that with a degree, all I needed to do was slap on there that I got my bachelor's in psychology, and the job offers were gonna come rolling in. And so once once I started seeing, it was tough back then to, really get interviews going. I just got very curious about what was behind the curtain of hiring. Like who's reading my resume, like what are they looking for? Why didn't they call me back? Um, and then it got to a point I started going to different career fairs and talking to the recruiters at the table, saying like, I don't care what you're hiring for. Like I want your job. Like I want to I want to stand at the table and shake hands and and figure out what other people do. And I just actively pursued that, and that's how I ended up getting into staffing. And it's been fun just growing through those different stages and seeing how recruiting has changed, how it hasn't. I've met a lot of great TA professionals at various levels, whether it's a coordinator or TA operations person or VPs of talent. Like everybody got their own take on the industry, and it's just fun. It really is my identity. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's what I do, and it's what I want to continue to grow and see how I can continue to help people.
yeah, it's all good, brother. It's all good. Nate, I appreciate your time, man. It was great meeting you back last year back at RecFest. Hopefully, we can meet again somewhere this year. Maybe share a stage. I know you can get up there and share some advice with some folks. Make that
Let me know.
make that a revenue stream for yourself for sure.
Getting paid to talk is on the list too. That's that's definitely on the list of things to do this year.
Absolutely. Well, folks, make sure you follow Mr. Nate Wiley on LinkedIn and Infinite Talent. Making sure you're connecting with him, and if you're in the, I know you just told me, but earlier today, you're in what state?
Oh, Charlotte, North Carolina.
Charlotte. But you staff countrywide.
Yeah. All I need is my laptop and a phone. Yeah, it's I don't care where they roll at.
There you go.
I don't broke into some global recruiting now, so yeah, you can't stop me. I'm international now.
There you go. You have to change the name, International
I
Infinite
like it.
Talent.
I like it.
There you go. All right, folks. We'll see you next time here on the Career Talks podcast.
All right.